My favorite part about this poem is the likening of a poem to tiny pieces of Band-Aids. And I just love that image because, a Band-Aid is kind of gross. It's not this like glorious thing. It's like, it's not romanticizing poetry. It's kind of, an everyday, like kind of daily object, but it's also like disgusting and it's small. And it's like, that's how I think of like thoughts turning into poetry. It's not this smooth, beautiful process. It's very scabby in that sense. And so I really liked that imagery.
Love that. Okay, great. I'm going to play the poem, and then I'm going to ask Kate, Erica, and Max to comment on it. Okay, in any way they like. All right, here is Eileen Myles.
Writing. I can connect any two things. That's God. Teeny piece of Band-Aid, little folded piece of Band-Aid. I ran to the bathroom to see my face. Sometimes I don't want to see my face in the mirror. Sometimes I can't bear my thoughts. Sometimes I can't do anything. But that's okay. Band-Aid, book, God. That's right.
Okay. Erica first.
This is like one of the best meta poems in the world.
Why is that?
Because I think it's actually enacting the thing that it's talking about. Mm-hmm. So by virtue of saying I can connect any two things, that's God, teeny piece of Band-Aid, et cetera. It's, they're narrating something that they're doing or experiencing that connects to the act of making a poem, where you're ultimately, at least for me in my process, I'm often writing to discover. So I don't know exactly what the poem is going to be telling me until I'm in the process of writing. And I feel like that's something that this poem is also doing, where it's foregrounding the idea that surprising connections happen on the page.
Yes. Beautifully put. And Max, I know you had something else you were going to say, but let me just throw this in. The beginning of the poem suggests a certain confidence or writerly egotism. I can do this. I can do anything. And that might be faux confidence at first, because clearly they are not so sure about how they look in the mirror, and maybe there's a little lack of confidence. Do you want to go with that?
Yeah, it's part of the way that this poem enacts what it's talking about, right? I mean, Eileen Myles takes us on this almost emotional roller coaster ride, right? In this very short period, from confidence to self-doubt, and then back to this divine moment, right, where we end with God. And I think that in a way, if we think about this in the larger context of the New York school, if we think of this in terms of the I do this, I do that poems of Frank O'Hara, it's somewhat refreshing to get this sort of performance of doubt and self-doubt that this poem does, and to sort of think about that alongside what seems to be often a more confident poetic process that we encounter in something like Frank O'Hara's I do this, I do that poems, right? Where you don't really get the sense immediately that Frank O'Hara is doubts about what this poetic process can do.
Right, no doubts at all.
I mean, Myles is saying ultimately that they think that, yeah, they're going to get there, they're going to connect the two things, but it's not always as simple as it seems. That being on the page, doing that connecting, it's painful. You need Band-Aids, right? It's
It's really cool. Kate, you should be invited to say whatever you want, particularly because this is Kate Week. But I'm just going to throw in this idea that comes from what Max just said. In my own mind, I could be totally wrong. I think there's what might be called true or honest meta poetry. This is an example of it. I need to be writing about my writing because I'm not sure I can pull this off, and I can pull this off, and I'm going to keep trying to do it, that kind of thing that Eileen does so well. And then there might be what, like falsely modest meta poetry, and certainly O'Hara fits that. O'Hara saying, I'm going to do meta poetry because it's a really good style that I kind of helped to invent, so here's an example. Anyway, I don't know how you feel about that, but go anywhere with this.
I think what's strange and crazy about this poem is she throws God in there. and I'm sorry, they render themselves God in the process of writing the poem, while at the same time they can't do anything, they can't stand their thoughts, they can't stand their appearance. So the theological implications of what they're saying, that God connects all things, and here I am being and doing that thing right here is incredible.
The analogy to God of writers, let's say in the 18th century novel, English novel, I mean, all the novelists thought of themselves as a deistic situation where they put together this fabulous structure of a fiction, and they were godlike. And that was a very open analogy. That went away in subsequent centuries, and in a way comes back through something like a poem by Eileen Myles saying, power, we can do this. Our imaginations. I think Dickinson has the same power, Volcanoes Be in Sicily.
Dan typed out, somehow God and book seem to go together. So I started to think about Band-Aids, and I realized that Band-Aids come into play when the wounds are small but distracting.
Wow, Dan. Amazing. Thank you.